Well, the DFL party is an amalgam that was created in the late 30s, early 40s. Hubert Humphrey was really the engineer who brought it together. The Farmer Labor Party was the old progressive party that really began in the early 30s, and it merged with the straight line Democratic Party, the Minnesota branch of the National Party. It set into motion a progressive tradition in Minnesota of which Hubert Humphrey was undoubtedly the star, and Eugene McCarthy and then Walter Mondale were the kind of elder fathers, and Orville Freeman. It has changed a great deal, of course, but still works in that tradition. I think they're very important, whether or not they are enunciated. The values that come under the word liberal, I think, are still very much part of the party, whether people speak of them in that language or not. Political language tends to become corrupted as one's opponents distort a word like liberal. It comes to mean something that liberals themselves don't recognize. I don't know that that's true. It depends on how you define it. I think that if you construct a definition of liberal that I would recognize, I think that most Americans would agree with it. The idea that government protects individual citizens from depredations by powerful entities, protects the individual against corporations and large organizations, the idea of the safety net, these are basics in liberals, and this is the America that we live in. We live in an America where we assume that if we fall down in the street, other people will come to our aid. This is the basis of liberalism. Well, it's all too complicated for me, Susan. You've made the mistake of bringing an ignorant person in for a guest. I'm just from... But when I opine about this, I look into my heart and I say, why have I allied myself with these people since I was in college? Why when I walk into a room full of Minnesota Democrats do I feel at home? And I have to look to my own experience for that. I can't think about this theoretically. I'm a Democrat because I went to public schools and I went to a land-grant university. And when I was in school, which is a long time ago, I felt that I was getting as good an education as anybody else in America. I did not feel inferior by the reason of the fact that my parents sent me out the door, put me on the yellow school bus, gave me a little lunch money in a manila envelope, and I went off to an ordinary school in a Midwestern small town. I felt I was getting as good an education as anybody else, and I think I was. Yes, I do. I do. But I love conventions. I love conventions. I would love being at a Republican convention. This is a grand old American tradition. This is a genuine public event, and there are fewer and fewer of them in our lives. I love conventions. I'd go to as many as possible. You're talking to too many reporters. They love to complain about these things, but they wouldn't be anyplace else. This is a reunion of media. Where else can you go in America where you are there on the floor with everybody else in television and magazines and newspapers, and Al Jazeera is there, and NHK is there from Tokyo, and the BBC and the CBC, and all of them there under that one little roof out there. This event, the Republican convention, and the inauguration, and that's about it. We go bravely on into the dark. We live to fight again tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. To be a liberal Democrat in Texas is a lonely life, but I admire you. And I'm glad you enjoy the convention. This is a performance art that everybody is a critic of. A good speech. Each of us knows what it is, And here is this stage where one person after another is brought out, and we get to look at them. We've read what pundits wrote about them, and the inside dope on them. But here they are, and they're on a stage, and they have to give a speech, and there was a great variety of quality last night. It was very interesting for. I spent it in the hotel room looking at people give speeches.
You watched it on TV?
I did. Well, I didn't know where I would be on the floor, and when I'm on the floor, people are always coming up and talking to me, and I just wanted to focus in on the four big ones last night. I didn't get a question in there, but it was all interesting. It comes from a different world than the world I live in, but I haven't looked at Al Gore's tax return or John Kerry's. I imagine they're complicated, but I haven't looked at them. But the verb extort money from people to pay for our grand social schemes. I don't equate taxation with extortion. The idea of opposition to taxation is something that Republicans have sold to people, so that now 17% of the American people, according to surveys, believe that it is morally justifiable to cheat on your income tax. This is not in the American tradition. Maybe this is how Italians are, but it's not how Americans are. Americans pay their taxes with pride. They realize the necessity of a basic social net, safety net for all people. And I'm not talking about grand social schemes. I'm talking about the basics. We take care of our young, and we take care of our old, and we take care of people who are thrown into dire circumstances that they simply cannot rescue themselves from. These are nobody's grand social schemes. It's just common decency, I think. I could go on in detail, but no, I'm not at all. It goes across both. It goes across both parties, and there are obvious advantages that people with a lot of money have in politics. Yeah, thanks for the call. Good questions. Will Middle America rally behind John Kerry? I of course don't know, but this convention is intended to get going an election campaign that America needs. America needs a good election at this point in our history. We have two philosophies that apparently have fairly evenly divided the electorate between them, and we owe this country a great campaign in which all of the issues are brought forward, and that's fought with enthusiasm and fought evenly. And I think the Democrats are united in that effort, and I think it can only be good for the president and the Republicans to have a strong, coherent opposition. I don't see Vietnam as playing, because it simply is too long ago. There are so many voters for whom this is ancient history that they've read about in books. I think all that the Democrats tried to establish about John Kerry was that when he was called, he went and he volunteered to go to Vietnam, and he served with distinction and real heroism under harrowing battle conditions. This is an antique political button for a politician long dead, politician after whom streets are named in Minnesota, Floyd B. Olson, who is an old progressive. Somebody gave it to me, and it's rare. This is probably from 1936. Floyd B. Olson was of the Farmer Labor Party that we were talking about before, and he was a radical. He was a progressive who came up in hard times in Minnesota, and was considered on the verge of becoming a national figure when he did himself in through living too big. He was a heavy smoker, and he liked to drink and run around, and he just sort of went to pieces. Yes. Well, it's good to hear from a Republican. I think that if we had a chance to talk back and forth, I think that we would find a large area of agreement on the idea of government protecting the individual against enormous bodies, institutions, corporations. Everybody knows how individuals can get chewed up in this world, and we need a lot of basic rules in our community to protect ourselves. We get up in the morning, we eat cereal out of a box, we drink our coffee, we get into our car. In every way, we're intersecting with people we don't know, who've manufactured things, who've made things that we use, and we simply assume that these things are safe, that we're protected in this world. We drive on freeways, and we trust that the laws are enforced. We go to work in a workplace, and we assume that the material in these walls is not going to poison us. I could go on and on and on. And to a large degree, it's government regulation, government ordinance, laws that protect us and enable us to move through this world and not be paranoid, to move through it freely and be the sort of jokey and dreamy people that we want to be. Well, I have a lot of good friends who are Republicans. I cherish them. I don't want to get rid of them. I just think that the Republican Party has changed so much in about the last 10 years, and it really has swung from the party that I remember, which was a party of Midwestern pragmatists and realists who asked difficult questions and made very good opponents, but who in the end believed in politics, in negotiation, in compromise, in working out solutions to problems. And we've gone from that to something which seems to me to be very harsh and very ideological, and people who use the Lord's name much too freely, and who claim the Lord's inspiration much too casually. I think that the Republican Party needs to look at itself very closely, and we hope to help them do that. Well, I think the great revolt in Congress that took place around 94, that maybe took place as a reaction to the election of Bill Clinton and all of that flurry in the first couple of years. There was a real backlash against that, and it has continued. And it's an anti-government rhetoric which strikes me as odd coming from people who hold public office. It's an amalgam of corporate libertarians and conservative Christian ideologues who have formed common cause that at least we Democrats cannot quite understand what these people have in common. Well, I think it's going to take a while, but I do think that good manners and civility, at least when we're looking each other eye to eye, are a help. And I think people still observe this. I love to go off and talk to Republican groups, and I do it all the time. I introduce myself as a museum quality, tax and spend, knee-jerk, bleeding heart liberal, and they laugh, and then we go on from there. I think that we have a great deal in common, and I've tried to speak to it a little bit in this book, and not just flay about with a sharp stick and attacking people. But no, I think we need these labels. I think Democrat and Republican really mean things to people, and they're useful. And we're just going to have to fight it out along these lines for a while longer. Well, I think that one of the most sorrowful things in my life is the way the issue of birthrights and abortion have divided the Democratic Party from religious people, mainly Catholics, but other people who have powerful, strong feelings about that. I feel that there's room in the Democratic Party for people who disagree about these things. I have friends who disagree with me on the subject of abortion. I have friends who disagree, who want the right to carry concealed weapons. I don't have a problem with that. I have people who disagree with me on the subject of same-sex marriage, and I don't have a problem with them being Democrats. I think that if the Democratic Party has become so narrow that it has offended and eliminated these people or made them feel unwelcome, I think it's a real tragedy. Well, I don't probably have as much contact with those people as you do. I lead a charmed life. I'm a writer. I spend a good deal of my life just walking around and looking. I don't even really need to work that closely with other people. I sit at a laptop at my dining room table and I write. So you would know more about that than I would. I wrote this book simply because I wanted to express what was in my heart about politics, and I did my best. Well, I've done some fundraisers for DFLers in Minnesota, and I'm happy to do that. I like hanging around with political people, but I'm just a writer, and I'm off on other things. Oh, I'm heading home. I have my bag all packed. I'm on a plane heading back to St. Paul. I'm going to watch it on TV.